article about him that was written back in 2012 when he became a priest, and he has quite the vocation story, from growing up in Colombia to coming to Milwaukee to you name it. So, Father Enrique, do you want to share your story with us?
Sure. So for those who have the privilege of not knowing who I am, I'm Father Enrique. I'm a priest for the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. I'm currently the associate pastor in two parishes here, St. Robert's in Shorewood and Holy Family in Whitefish Bay. And that's part-time in those both parishes, and part-time and the chaplain and the interim director for the Newman Center at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. So that's what I'm currently doing now, but I've been a priest of the Archdiocese for 2012, yeah, so almost 8 years, so it will be 8 years this year. And as you noticed, yeah, Sister said, I'm not from this country because of my accent. I grew up in Colombia, in South America. I grew up in a very faithful Catholic family. But my mom raised us by herself, 4 children. So I have 1 brother and 2 sisters. And my vocation story started at a very young age, I will say. And the beauty of vocation stories, and hopefully Sister can share some of her vocation story too, is that every vocation is a little different, because we are created uniquely by God, and God respects that individuality of every person, and he called individual people in different ways. So sometimes I'm the former vocation director of the diocese, and sometimes talking with young men and women, they will say, "Oh, I heard this vocation story. I wish I would have it that way." And it's like, no, that's not how it works. It's not a model that you follow. It's the Lord calls. That's it. Whatever he calls and how he calls is great. But when the first time that I heard the call, probably when I was 9 years old. So I grew up in mountains in Colombia, a poor family, and we needed to go down the mountain every Sunday to celebrate Mass with the community, and went back. But in the mountains where we grew up, in the poor neighborhood, there was a small chapel, and the priest used to come maybe once or twice a year to celebrate Mass with us in that chapel. And I remember one time when the priest came to celebrate Mass, and I was 9 years old or so, approximately that age, and I saw the priest coming in his car and going to the chapel, and I was next to my mom, and I told my mom, Mom, I want to be like him. And my mom said, "No, that's not for you. We are poor, that we cannot do that." And I think that's one of the things that I noticed about my vocation story, how the Lord has called me, and how the evil one has as well put some lies along the way. Mm-hmm. Because even though money for the church is not an issue, you have a vocation, the church finds a way for you to answer the call. So that was a total lie. Not by my mom, of course. My mom, that's what she believed. We were poor, and there were no way that I will go to higher education, but thanks be to God, I'm a priest today. So, and the Lord found a way for me to enter seminary. But because of that, when I was 9 years old, you think that whatever your mom says is the word of God. So I totally forgot about the idea of the priesthood until I was in my senior year in high school. So I was very involved in the parish. I was doing different things. In the parish, I was doing in the youth group, I was a server and different things. And then the pastor at the time in my home parish in Colombia came to me and he said, "I think you can be a good priest." And that's when I started thinking about it again. I never thought before that, when I was 9 years old until then, if the Lord was calling me to be a priest or not. I was not talking about it or thinking about it or praying about it. But when the priest came to me and said, "I think you can be a good priest," that's when I recognized how the Lord was calling me indeed to become a priest. And after praying a lot and talking with my pastor, friends, priest, and my family, yes, we decided that I think that was the call of God. And then I applied to to the seminary, but I couldn't be a priest according to the bishop at the time in my home diocese back in Colombia, that I couldn't be a priest because my parents were never married. So again, that was another lie of the enemy along the way for me to answer the call, because of course that's not an impediment to be a priest, because my mom was a single mom, didn't impeded me to become a priest. But because of that, because of that, I needed to go to a different hometown in Colombia and study for the priesthood there in my college seminary. And then I was able to do my college seminary there, but as my family was paying for my tuition, it was really expensive and very difficult for my mom to do that. So my prayer was to find a diocese, a support of a diocese that I will have help me financially. And the other thing that I was praying for, it was I wouldn't be ordained so young. So if I will continue my studies in Colombia, I will have been ordained when I was 25 years old, which is the youngest you can be ordained to the priesthood. And I thought that I needed more maturity, that I needed to be longer. So, and that's when in the seminary that I was studying, different bishops from all over the world come down there to recruit guys for their own diocese. And that's how the Archdiocese of Milwaukee went down to that seminary to recruit 2 of us to study for the Archdiocese here. And that was my prayer answer, because the Archdiocese helped me financially for my studies. And as well, it will postpone my ordination at least 2 years, because I needed to come here and learn English as a second language. So that's how I ended up here. So it had been very difficult journey, but one of the things that helped me along the way, of course, is God. And God and Mary. Mary, our mother, has been always that woman in my life, that person in my life that has helped me along the way in all my struggles and difficulties of leaving family and leaving everything and going to a different country by myself. Because even though at the time they recruit 2 of us to come to Milwaukee, 3 days before flying to Milwaukee, the other guy decided not to come.
Oh.
Yeah, but not knowing anybody, to a different country with a language that I didn't know. So it was a challenge. And I came in the middle of January to Wisconsin, and it was a snowstorm. So there was snow.
You had quite the welcome.
Exactly. But yeah, so but in all of that, somehow, even though some doors were closed, some no's came along, I saw how the Lord was pointing me to the right direction. So the Lord wanted me to be in the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, even though growing up, I never dreamed to leave the country, never dreamed to leave my family. I never dreamed to speak a second language or living in America or anything like that. But the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I've been a priest for over 7 years and had been the best 7 years of my life. So
that's incredible. I love the part that really resonates with your story is like just that perseverance. Like all these things are in your way, but you kept persevering and the Lord kept working in your life. And so it's just beautiful how that all happened.
Yeah. And so, and on another struggle that I had is because at that time when I was discerning to enter the seminary, my father came into my life. So my father, I never met him before, but he came into my life, and he left the faith because he married with another woman who was not Catholic. And so he didn't agree for me to become a priest. And he has a huge farm in Venezuela. And so he said, like, don't enter the seminary and I'll give you everything I own. And I said, like, no, I never need you before, so I don't need you right now. And if this is of God, God will make it see through whatever it was. So, and I think that's one of the the passage of Acts of the Apostles, who in chapter 5, who has helped me a lot. We read that passage actually last Friday during the daily mass. And in that chapter, it says when Gamaliel was talking about with the Sanhedrin, defending the apostles, and he said, talking about that so he says, this endeavor of this activity is of human origin, it will destroy itself. But if it comes from God, you will not be able to destroy them. Mm-hmm. And that kept me going to understand that if this was of God, even though one door closes, the Lord will open the next one. And that passage really motivated me to keep going. And even at the end of that passage, he says, so they leave the presence of the Sanhedrin until they free them. And he says, they left rejoicing because they had been found worthy to suffer dishonor for the sake of the name. And that motivates me as well. Because, like we don't find honor. That's not my pursuit, or having money or a great salary or being famous. That was not what I'm doing it for. I wanted to give my life for Christ, and to wherever He took me, I will accept it. And even though it was painful and difficult, and that kind of that they rejoice because they found worthy to suffer, that impacted me really much. And when I was lonely here for many months, when I just moved here and suffering with the snow and the cold and different culture and not able to speak and all of that, I found a lot of consolation in that this suffering was not going forever, that the Lord will help me through it all. So I have seen the presence of God and Mary all the way in my vocation story, and even at the
yeah. And your story can resonate, because I know in the vocations, a lot of people, whether their family isn't like your family wasn't very supportive, and a lot of people who might be discerning religious life, their families aren't supportive either, or even religious life, they can think, well, like religious life is almost like a culture in itself, because like you don't, at least for me, like, because for instance, like you don't watch, like the only TV you watch is the news, and during novitiate you don't get to be on Facebook. And so like that's like a whole, like, can I do that? Like, is God calling me to that? Like, so people to realize, like, you can, like, just like you entered a new culture in America, like people can also have the courage to enter a new culture in religious life per se. So it's, yeah, kind of on a smaller scale, because
yeah. But even, I mean, and sometimes we take for granted that an individual person may have discerned their vocation for a while, maybe in secret, maybe they haven't told anybody. And when they approach the family with the news, it's hard for the family, because probably that was the first time they ever thought about it. And so it's important to let the families discern too, because it's a kind of a mourning process that they have to go through, because they have ideals for you of having children, getting married, all of that, of grandkids for their parents, and it's like, no, that's not what the Lord wants for my life. And because right now, even though it was difficult for my mom, for me to leave the city and live to another state and then the country, and having far away from her, she's totally happy right now that I'm a priest. She's very proud of me and my father as well. Mostly because I'm a happy priest, and seeing that I'm happy, they're happy. Mm-hmm. And so you have to, kind of, your parents or your family members that don't understand your vocation yet, give them time that the Lord work in their lives, and they will hopefully understand a little bit your own vocation.
Oh, that's really good advice. Really good advice. And just thank you so much for being with us today, because your story just, it's hard. It's moving. It's very good to hear, especially in these times when we might feel like there's not a lot of hope out there with COVID-19 and everything. It's beautiful to know there's still hope, that God's still working, and that God might be calling people even in these times to answer the call. So
yes, definitely. Yeah. And I think the Lord is doing a lot of work this time. I think there is a lot of time where you're praying a lot, you're in silent a lot, and that's the perfect time to listen to how the Lord is calling you. So, yeah, take advantage of this time.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Father Enrique, and thank you so much for everyone for watching, and may God's blessings be with you in all you do. Hi, everyone.
Thank you.